It was one of the most acclaimed novels of the 20th century, and now, more than 50 years later, comes its sequel. But the follow-up to Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird was actually written before it. Lee penned Go Set a Watchman in the mid-1950s, but her editor was so taken with the flashback sequences featuring its central character, Scout, that she was persuaded to write the story of her childhood as a complete book.
In our courts, all men are created equal.
To Kill a Mockingbird is an enduring portrayal of Scout Finch and her activist lawyer father Atticus as he defends a young black man accused of raping a white woman in the American Deep South. It sold 40 million copies across the globe, yet it was assumed to be Harper Lee's only work, until now. Her second book, Go Set a Watchman, tells the story of an adult Scout returning home from New York to see her father. It was actually written by Lee before her masterpiece, but only recently rediscovered after her editor told her to put it aside. Well, with me now are two people whose lives were shaped by To Kill a Mockingbird. The author Philip Henscher and Shami Chakrabarti, Director of Liberty and Chair of the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction. Philip Henscher, I mean, this is so unbelievable. It could almost be a work of fiction, couldn't it?
Well, you know, nobody would be more pleased to see a second novel from this great novelist, the sequel to this great novel, really. I think we might look into it a little bit cautiously. However, I think it's very interesting that it's surfaced now. She's in very poor health. She seems to be in a care home. She must have been asked at some point previously, if you can't write a second novel, why not publish this first novel that we happen to know about? The idea that it's gone missing for decades, it's suddenly surfaced. It may be perfectly all right. It may be perfectly all right. I'm sure it will be very interesting. But whether it's going to be that second novel that we all really long for, I'm not quite so convinced just yet.
Well, Shami,
is it To Kill a Mockingbird or the Da Vinci Code?
Well, are you suspicious or are you just pleased? Given that the original, you've said, inspired you to get into human rights.
Oh, definitely. It was a very, very formative book for me. I will divide your audience because I did it for O-level. That's what people did before GCSEs. And I was taught it by a young, inspiring English teacher who is Mary Bastard, who's now the leader of one of our major teaching unions in this country. It's inspired so many people. It's about the rule of law, it's about access to justice, it's about human rights, it's about equality under the law, all of these things under threat right now. So this is very timely. So I can't help but be excited, whatever Philip says whatever the problem is. And a few years ago, there was a big anniversary of To Kill a Mockingbird, maybe the 50th or something. And so we were all talking about how it inspired us. And I got a letter from a Liberty member who said, I want to tell you, Shami, that I was a young teacher on a kind of teaching exchange from England to the Deep South. And we put on the play of To Kill a Mockingbird with these American kids, and there was a sort of old lady who was sort of shuffling at the back of the church hall, and he said, "Excuse me, ma'am, but what are you doing? What are you doing putting on this play?" Well, we thought the kids would be inspired by it. Why do you ask? She said, because my name is Harper Lee and I wrote the book. Why did you not write a second? And the answer comes because I said everything I ever wanted to say in that book, and I believe every single word.
Well, so credence to the conspiracy theory. Is this going to be any good, this second, though?
Well, it's almost irrelevant, isn't it? Because, you know, Ezra Pound says that a classic is a book that stays news. And my God, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird has stayed news, hasn't it? You know, it's framed the debate. It's just, and it goes on being worth thinking about when you think about the lavish fraction of justice that black people are awarded now in America. You know, my God, you know, that is still a relevant book. Do we need a second book? We're still talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. It was absolutely headline news then, and I think it remains headline news now.
I want to know what Scout Finch is doing now.
What do you think?
I want her to be President of the United States, looking back on Atticus and how she came to why she shut down Guantanamo Bay, why she changed American policy in this radical way.
But you see, this book has liberated you. We can all kind of speculate about Scout and about her family and about what happened to these people. It really opens up a debate in the most generous, wonderful way.
But this is what people like you do, right? This is what novelists do,
Yeah.
that activists and politicians don't do. You can actually move more people than will ever be changed by a political speech, even a piece of legislation. And that is the story here tonight.
Just briefly, I mean, Harper Lee's famously reclusive. How do you think she will cope with this suddenly being thrust back into the limelight again?
I don't think she'll play any part in promotion. I think she isn't really reclusive. I mean, I think not deciding that you're not going to talk to journalists after 1964 is not the same as
That's
being
forgivable.
That's forgivable. But I would be very surprised if we see her do any interviews. I think, apart from anything else, her health isn't up to it.
Philip Henscher, Shami Chakrabarti, thank you very much for coming in.